So it appears that Trump has done a lot more zigging than zagging. And that goes back to my zigzag theory for Trump. And I'll explain this in just a little bit. Hello, my friends. My name is Gerdes. I'm just a professor trying to provide you with context in the war in Ukraine. It is Saturday, March 22nd, 2025. We're going to start here with the first of 7 stories. President Zelenskyy arrived in Donetsk region. He visited the command post of the tactical group Pokrovsk and received a report on the defense of the Pokrovsk direction, the operational situation, and fulfillment of tasks. So he actually was there. He's like in shelters underground with his men, giving out awards and finding out what's going on, being there firsthand. That's the mark of a good leader, that he's willing to take these. And these are calculated risks, but they're risks nonetheless. So, okay. So that's where Zelenskyy was today. Now, at the same time, let's go back about 4 weeks ago when Zelenskyy was in the Oval Office. There was an interesting thing in the Euromaidan press yesterday. Despite warnings, Zelenskyy, quote, made a mistake by playing to the audience, unquote, when the press entered during his meeting with Trump at the White House. And this was from Kellogg saying that. And he said Zelenskyy learned his lesson that Trump is completely different than Biden. Here's the actual article. We said early that morning that at the Hay Adams Hotel, I was there with 13 other senators. We said, okay, look, we're going to walk you through what it looks like when you come into the Oval Office so that you're not surprised by it, and understand that President Trump is significantly different than Joe Biden, Kellogg explained. Kellogg noted that everything proceeded smoothly until the press arrived, at which point the situation changed dramatically, as if someone had flipped a switch. He was starting to play to the audience. We had forewarned him that morning, don't go there, and he was playing to the press when they came in. And I said, oh, we're going to go down a bad path with President Trump, and that's what happened. Now, I don't think that Zelenskyy did anything wrong in just asking that question, but it was the press. It was J.D. Vance and the press comments that really shifted what was going on in that conference. Okay, next big story. So this is level 6, says Trump. He's talking about the F-47, which is a new airplane. F is for fighter. That's the designation. Like B is for bomber. F-47. Now, there's speculation that 47 is because he likes the number 47 because that's what he is, the 47th president.
The F-47 will be the most advanced, most capable, most lethal aircraft ever built. An experimental version of the plane has secretly been flying for almost 5 years, and we're confident that it massively overpowers the capabilities of any other nation. There's no other nation. We know every other plane. I've seen every one of them, and it's not even close. This is a next level. You know, level 5 is good. This is level 6, they say. The F-47 is equipped with state-of-the-art stealth technology. It's virtually unseeable and unprecedented power. It's got the most power of any jet of its kind ever made. Maneuverability, likewise, is there's never been anything like it, despite the power and speed. Its speed is top. It's over 2, which is something that you don't hear very often. America's enemies will never see it coming. Hopefully we won't have to use it for that purpose, but you have to have it. And if it ever happens, they won't know what the hell hit them.
Okay, so this is him reading his briefing, his text about the F-47. And then Hegseth, after that, says that under the previous administration, we looked like fools, but not anymore.
Under the previous administration, we looked like fools. Not anymore.
Okay, so there's a really interesting thing about that currently there's a good chunk of the population that thinks that under the current administration you think this way. But I'll tell you that Republicans largely have thought that under Biden we looked terrible, and Democrats largely think the opposite way right now, and that's a common thing. But what Trump has done has been so disruptive to the international order, beyond what Russia and Putin have done to the international order. It's been so it's injected so much uncertainty that it's really interesting to hear him say that. And I say that as a Republican and not a rhino or MAGA Republican either. I'm old school kind of Reagan Republican. I'm looking at this like, what? Now, In a previous video, I talked about the zigzag theory of how to understand Donald Trump. And he has two heads here intentionally because he could go this way or that way because he doesn't really have an ideological core. And if you haven't seen this, I'll put this at the end or below so that you can see it. I think it's explanatory. But he's done far more zigging, that is going toward Russia, than zagging back toward Ukraine, at least at this point. So I'm open to admitting that's what's going on because, so for example, I got an email from someone, a viewer, another professor who was saying this. Thank you. And I'm putting this out here for a reason. I took away the name, whatever, but I'm putting this out here for a reason so that you can see I'm open to admitting that is what has actually transpired. Thank you for your continued work in educating people about the war in Ukraine. Watching your recent analyses on Trump's approach to Ukraine, while I understand you're not an apologist for Trump, it really does look like you're having to do logical gymnastics to try to rationalize how Trump could do all these things he's doing if he isn't beholden to Putin. Okay, so let's stop there for a second. No, I'm looking for the best face of anything. I'm looking for evidence that he might be going this way, and I'm seeing much more evidence that he's going this way, trying to see what's actually happening here, and it doesn't look, at least at this point, pretty. But what we know about Trump is that he could go the other direction, but I haven't seen it yet to a large degree that would give me any great comfort. He says, I myself am seeing almost all zigging and almost no zagging. I'm agreeing with you. It's all zigging so far, or almost all zigging so far, with very little zagging. And how much zagging is a minerals agreement, or how much zagging is a proposal for this or that. It doesn't look like he's doing a lot that's pro-Ukraine. And so I'm admitting that right up front. Well, I don't think that Putin actually has compromise on Trump. Now let's stop. We can't just say that without having evidence. Oh, but it's a conspiracy. We don't have the evidence. But you can't just put that out there and say that this is a thing when you don't know if it's a thing. Okay. Well, I don't think Putin actually has compromise on Trump. I believe Trump greatly admires Putin and wants very much to be friends with him. I think that's very fair. And you see that in multiple legitimate sources that he does admire Putin and does seem to want to have a good relationship with him. When one looks at the sum of Trump's actions through the lens that Trump is an unwitting sycophant to Putin, whom he views as a stronger alpha male, all of Trump's moves make perfect sense. Now, I'm not quite sure about this. Theoretically, that's possible, but I don't know what's motivating Trump. That could be it. Don't know. Okay, as much as we Americans want to believe that whoever is our president, regardless of his politics, is a person of good moral character and a defender of freedom and democracy, like in Hollywood movies where the president is never compromised, even when those around him are, I think it's time to, so let's stop at that point. Yeah. I think if anything, I'm hoping that the best case scenario, that he does zag. And even if you don't like Trump, you're probably hoping that you're wrong and that he does zag and do the right thing, even if you only see zigging so far. He goes on and says, I think it's time we recognize that we don't have a Manchurian candidate. We have a Manchurian president. Okay, I'm not sure that we have one of those, but okay, you're welcome to your opinion. But okay, I mean, let's keep going. I appreciate that you keep reserving judgment, but when there's very little to no zagging from Trump, what more evidence do we need than what Trump has already said and done to cozy up to Putin? So I'm agreeing with you on this paragraph that so far he's shown us very little zagging, if any, and he's shown us a lot of zigging toward Russia. Anyway, those are some thoughts that have been on my mind as I'm watching your analysis lately. So I'm concurring that that's what we have seen so far. I leave open the possibility because that's the way he is. And if you look back at how he does deals with other people, possibly, I hope, I mean, I want it to be that. I mean, let's get there, but I don't know that we're going to get it. And so I'm saying that out loud. Okay, let's keep going. With that in mind, let's look at this. The Kremlin is weaponizing ongoing ceasefire negotiations and deliberately misrepresenting the status of terms of a future ceasefire agreement in order to delay and undermine negotiations for a settlement in the war. The Kremlin officials are leveraging narratives about Ukraine strikes and combat operations in Russian territory to justify rejecting peace negotiations with Ukraine and to continue the war to a domestic Russian audience. Okay, so now here's the thing with that. while Trump is zigging only and not zagging, they're also like repeating Kremlin talking points, which is absolutely mind-numbingly bizarre to me that they would only say this and they wouldn't see the other. But it's like, so personnel is policy, and the people that he has around him seem to be largely echoing what the Kremlin is saying, and that's very frustrating. Jason J. Smart talks about this. Russia rejects more of Trump's peace plan. Quote, no one but Russia will control the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Its property belongs to the Russian Federation, unquote, according to the director of the plant as he's speaking to task. And so this is another mockery of Trump, but that too is not causing Trump to zig. He's or not causing him to zag toward Ukraine. He still continues to just zig. The Kremlin is preparing to intensify narratives accusing Ukrainian forces of war crimes in the Kursk Oblast. And if you hear that parroted, I showed you some little social media about that the other day. Okay, so here is kind of what I think is motivating much of the zigging. The pretense, at least, of a personal relationship that Putin seems to have for Trump, or at least from Trump's point of view. This was carried in RT, the conversation that Witkoff, the negotiator, had with Tucker Carlson. Just listen to this, because this is going to be, and there will be American Christians that'll be like eating this up and going, yeah, that's right. That's evidence that somehow Putin's a good guy. Listen to this.
In the second visit that I had, it got personal. The President Putin had commissioned a beautiful portrait of President Trump from the leading Russian artist, and actually gave it to me and asked me to take it home to President Trump, which I brought home and delivered to him. It's been reported in the paper, but it was such a gracious moment, and told me a story, Tucker, about how when the president was shot, he went to his local church and met with his priest and prayed for the president, not because he was the president of he could become the president of the United States, but because he had a friendship with him and he was praying for his friend. It was, I mean, can you imagine sitting there and listening to these kind of conversations?
Now, I would argue that he did it not because he's a great friend, but because this is a great talking point. Now, I could be wrong, but that seems to be what I would read into that. But Putin has been on a charm offensive for Trump for some time here. Okay, now here, this is Sergei Semileny posting this. Hi, dear Steve Witkoff. Do you know that Russian military propagandists make fun of you and Donald Trump on their own TV, laughing at how you have believed their nonsense lie that Russia has shot down its own drones to respect the ceasefire? Here's Rybar, war propagandist, and this is what he has to say. So I'm going to read it. Right now, the only statements are coming from the White House about what a constructive meeting Trump and Zelensky had. But we understand that these are just empty words that do not correspond to what is happening on the battlefield, except for those stories where they say that our air defense, and this was just the other day, shot down 7 drones. But this is nonsense. Oh, this nonsense was believed. Mr. Witkoff said he was impressed by Russia's commitment to peace. Yeah, that's the same Steve Witkoff. Right now, only statements are coming from the White House about what constructive meeting Trump and Zelensky had, what a constructive meeting they had. But we understand that these are just empty words that do not correspond to what is happening on the battlefield. Okay, so that's how their propagandist and Rybar is squarely on that side of the equation are saying. Michael McFaul talks about how I really wish the Trump team was trying to end the war in Ukraine would stop doing so many interviews. What U.S. national interest is served by all this talking? Diplomacy is best done behind closed doors. That's right. Now, you can have press conferences, but it seems like, okay, so I have another theory here, and that is that Trump understands the attention economy better than most people, and he's very often just trying to throw something out there to keep the story about him. And it's like there's no bad press kind of thing. I think Trump thinks in those kind of terms. So even Witkoff's statement over here, where was it? Witkoff's statement here, even his statement, which sounds bizarre, it's going to take up the next news cycle, and that's what's actually happening here. That's why they're doing what they're doing. That's just my theory. I could be very wrong about that, but that's how I see things. Okay, keep speaking up to these GOP representatives. It can make a difference. Expect more from them, demand more for them. They represent us, and we need them to take a stand for the high ideals of this nation against the administration's despicable demands. This is another one. So yesterday we saw a letter from the chairman of the military armed services committees, both the House and the Senate, to the president. Here's one from Grassley, senator from Iowa, and Tillis from North Carolina, in a joint letter with Democrats calling on Secretary Rubio to reinstate a research contract helping track abducted Ukrainian children. Like, we should all be on the same page about something like that. Here is Grassley at a fairly heated town hall meeting back in his own state. Just for a moment.
Why do you believe that President Trump is above the law? And I'll just reinforce what other people have been saying here. Why have you not spoken out for it?
Okay, these town hall meetings are usually really boring, and that he held this meeting in a room this size for, constituents in this part of his state is telling you that, like, that's like normally the capacity. There's usually not standing room only. It's usually you can kind of park the 20 people that actually decide to show up there. And so keep putting pressure. I put this out this morning, but it's worth hearing again. This is Representative Don Bacon. He's another Republican. He's saying this fight for the future of our party, for the soul of the party. I don't like the direction that we're going. I want you to hear this, because there are Republicans that think this way.
If Ukraine falls today, Moldova will be next.
Mm-hmm.
Probably Georgia, maybe the Baltics. And you're going to be spending a lot more money in NATO at this point trying to protect the East Europe from Russia. China is watching what we do with Russia.
That's right.
And so therefore, Taiwan's being threatened. I like to be a team player. I like our team to win. But this is a fight for the future of our party, the soul of our party. I don't like the direction it's going. As you mentioned, we are undermining the international order that America has built for 80 years. Now, I don't know if the president means to do it, but I sure perceive it going that direction. And if I don't say anything, then I feel like I'm guilty. I feel like I got to speak up and be an advocate for the core values that I believe in. And I want to be on the right side of history here.
Yeah. And so I agree completely with him. And again, my perception is that Trump has done more hence the title of this video. He's done all zigging and no zagging. This is Trump's approval rating right now. This is on CNN, which CNN generally won't like Trump, but they're pointing out his approval rating. And
look, here's the bottom line. Trump's net job approval rating. Look, in January 2025, he was on the positive side of the ledger. He was at plus 7 points. Look now, he has come back down. He is underwater, right? He's doing a little bit of the breaststroke, maybe popcorn.
Okay.
But
on what issues is he positive? Only on immigration. That's the only thing that he has high marks on. Economy, federal budget, foreign relations or foreign policy, healthcare, tariffs. That's a net negative for Trump. And now, foreign policy is important to us as we're watching, as you're here for that reason. But for many people in the country, it's not even that important, but he's negative on all of these things right now. Okay. Just a couple more things and we'll be done. This is the former foreign minister of Lithuania talking about Europe and the way that Europe sees itself and should be thinking.
But it can happen only if Europe starts believing in itself. Honestly, I mean, there's no other way to put it. Because if Europe is looking for a regulation and doesn't fight it and says, well, unfortunately, we cannot do it, either you stand up, you understand that this is a historic moment, and we start writing a new chapter where Europe is the main voice for freedom and supporting the freedom fighters and supporting the free media and supporting the people fighting, against the dictatorships, or we don't, and then nobody will. So we need to quit.
So America's been disappointing. Trump has been zigging and not zagging. At least so far, that's the case, and that's a fair statement. I hope he zags instead of just zigs, but we don't know that he will. And so the alternative left is for Europe to stand up. Meanwhile, I take some weird comfort in that this is what Russia has been reduced to, is making deals with Kim Jong-un. And It's bad that they're getting support from North Korea, but that's really quite a reduction for Russia in stature. Leave you with this last little bit. Trump called to discuss with me. This is Darth Putin. Trump called to discuss with me agreeing to a ceasefire and ended up asking Ukrainians to surrender. Well, that does feel like what it's been like. But okay, my friends, that's all that I have for today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes and the shares and the subscribes. Thank you for the coffees. Thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.